is. I've never found a love like this. There it is. I've never found a love like this.
Hello everybody, welcome back to E20 Zone TV. It is Tuesday, and for us West Ham fans, that's all it is. It's bloody Tuesday. I'm joined by two guests. Him to your right, you already know, but the one man at the bottom you don't know, and I want you to go and subscribe to his channel, is Babbling Irons, I think it is, but I'm going to let him introduce himself. Take it away.
So I'm Mike, I'm part of Babbling Irons. So it's me, we've got Frankie, is another guy who does it, and we've got Sloth as well. So yeah, we're basically been going on for a little bit now, just doing the YouTube thing. Obviously got a Twitter channel, but yeah, we try and be a bit more, I guess, analytical in our approach and try and kind of put out, little kind of scout reports on players that we're looking at and, kind of some statistics and things. So we've been going for a bit, looking to kind of get a bit more engagement and so on. And that's why we're here as well.
Yeah, good man. More West Ham channels, the better. Listen, to everyone in the chat, I will be putting the link in the description after this is done. So please go over, subscribe to the man's channel, help him out. I really do mean that. Tommy, West Ham, mate, talk to me. What is going on with our transfer system, mate? Because we ain't got one at the minute.
No, it's a kind of frustrating January window again. It seems to be every year. We had this a year ago when we desperately needed some reinforcements because obviously we had the Europa League restarting and excuse me, and we had a very thin squad. So it seems to be just, I don't know if it's a David Moyes thing or if it's a club thing or a bit of both. But yeah, we just are not very good at strengthening in the January transfer window. And we're seeing that many of the Premier League teams around us are doing exactly that. The likes of Southampton, Everton, Bournemouth are all kind of really strengthening. Forest, I think we've got a couple in as well. And we're kind of the only team down there. Okay, we brought in Danny Ings early in the window, which is a decent signing. It's good to have Danny Ings there for backup. He does know where the net is, and that could potentially make a difference to us. But I think certainly we needed a bit more than that. I think particularly defensively, I think we desperately need to upgrade at the fullback positions, and it would have been nice, I think, particularly on the right-hand side, to have upgraded, because it seems Moyes is going to play with the wing-back system more often, and while Emerson plays okay on the left-hand side, I think on the right-hand side, none of our players, Alexis Sofala, Johnson or Kerr, I think are up to the job as wing-backs on that right-hand side, and at the very least, I would have liked to have seen another kind of right-sided defender come in, but it appears that Danny Ings will be our only window business, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Mike, you've been covering this on your channel, right? I've seen your videos. I've seen you lads doing your thing on there. What do you make of this, mate?
For me, it feels like, one, we weren't prepared for the window. The only way you can look at this window is that we weren't prepared. If we don't have, we know which players are interested in signing and chasing essentially players that are not interested. That says to me you've not done your groundwork prior to the window and spoken with those players, or at least spoken with their agents to see, the validity of that kind of move. So chasing Moffey when he's saying, I only want to stay in France, I only want to go to one particular club, which was Nice, and he's gone there now on a loan to buy, shows, well, we're either the phantom bid process, which has just been talked about,
seen from before,
we're doing that and making it look like we're going for a player that is banging in goals, or we've genuinely thought we could kind of convince him. But either way, it turned out to be a waste because of what he wanted. Another way of looking at it is that they're not convinced in Moyes, essentially lasting past, let's just say, February, March time. And what they're actually then doing is going, well, we'll keep you in charge for this window. You're probably not going to push us too much on signing, so we'll kind of stick with that. And then outside of that, we'll then make our decision as to whether we bring someone in. Bringing in Ings it makes sense, but when you hear Moyes' words around it, it doesn't make sense because it's well, we are lacking goals. That's fair enough. Danny Ings brings goals. He said we're
Yeah.
also lacking creativity. And it's like, well, Danny Ings doesn't bring creativity in that sense. And we're light on a right winger. We're essentially light on a left winger because at that time we didn't know what was going on with Cornet.
Yeah.
Again, you know, as an attacking midfielder, we're not playing Fornals. So arguably you want an attacking midfielder that he feels is competent enough to drop out Souček to play a free in midfield if that's what we're going for as well. So it looks like a bit of a mess, really. We've not really known what we wanted.
Is this just to come in there, Mike? Yeah, I'll say this to both of you, right? Is this a case that West Ham don't know what to do with David Moyes?
Yeah, for
Basically.
me, it is. For me, it's we had a conversation on Babbling before where we said, do we just take away the control of transfers from David Moyes and just say, we are buying these players, you are going to have to implement them? Because at this rate, we don't see you staying beyond this year. So you need to prove to us that we can bring in players that you can get going and so on. You know, Ings for me felt like they gave Moyes something, but really, in all honesty, I don't think their heart was in it. I personally feel they've checked out. As a board, I feel they've checked out and they're just waiting until the clause goes.
I agree. Tommy, what do you reckon, mate?
Yeah, I suppose it is a bit of a mess for me. I mean, if there's an issue of trust here in that they don't particularly want to give Moyes too much money to spend in January because they feel he hasn't really integrated the players from the summer properly, hasn't been able to make them look worthy of the money that's been spent on them, then maybe there is some reticence. Frankly, if that was there, they should have just sacked him. You know, and bring in a new manager and let him have whatever funds are available this January. It's all a bit bizarre, really. I mean, would it surprise anyone if they, let the window close and then we lose at Newcastle and they sack him, new manager comes in, window's already out the way, they don't have to worry about him looking for money to strengthen in January.
Dangerous, don't it, though, Tommy?
So I can see them going in the next 4 games. That's how I feel it's going to be.
This board are playing a dangerous game if that is the case. Like, when I look at all them other teams around us, like, I look at Bournemouth, look at the players Bournemouth are signing, and people are saying they are shooing to get relegated. And I'm thinking, I don't know about that. You know what I mean? Some of the players that they're bringing in. Like, are they playing a dangerous game, this board? Are they trying to gamble with West Ham's future, basically?
I think they're gambling, but I think you look at it another way. If they are selling, in their mind, where is the incentive to spend money beyond wanting to stay up?
Yeah.
Their argument is they're probably looking at that team and saying, we're seeing enough signs. I don't know what signs they're seeing, but they're probably saying they're seeing enough. And there's probably an overconfidence that David Moyes will not get you relegated. They're obviously forgetting what happened at Sunderland, but they're obviously come to that conclusion that he won't get us relegated. So really, all we need to do is see out this season and put everything into Europa League conference. And it's going to be, we've given you a striker to go get the goals. You need to find a creative solution within that team because arguably it's creative enough based on last year. And you need to now go out and do it because you've also got players coming back from injury. So I think there's been a lot of happy coincidences or happy things that have happened for the board where they can start going, well, you've got injuries coming back in now. Some players look like they're getting into some form. Yes, others are buying, but even still, our squad should be strong enough. I think that's what they're probably positioning. And I think Moyes has been a bit weak, in all honesty, for not coming out and pushing, saying, I need these players. I'm not getting these players in. We need to do better. It's not been that. It seems to be very much a toe in a party line. And again, the whole I'm very happy with my squad kind of conversation. Yeah,
I totally agree. Totally agree with everything you said there. One thing you said there that I literally, alarm bells started ringing in my nut was he's weak. Moyes is a very weak manager. Like he's a yes man. Let's be honest here. Like he's a yes man. He was a yes man last January, and he's been a yes man again. I'm going to talk about Craig Dawson. Well, obviously Craig Dawson is left. And he's sad that he's gone. Tommy, but there's no replacement by the looks of it. Who is going to be the replacement? If we're not bringing no one in, who is the replacement for Craig Dawson then?
Well, look, I mean, we've seen many times Moyes is not afraid to use fullbacks as centre-backs. Yeah. He's done it with Johnson on the right-hand side. He's done it with Cresswell on the left. I think he feels even if he wants to play 3, he has an obvious immediate 3 there. With everybody fit, I think he feels, and I think apparently Zuma will be back very soon. So he feels, he's got his 3 of perhaps Aguerd, Oggy and Zuma. And then we've also got Kerr, who can go in there. And then he feels he can also play Cresswell on the left of a 3. He's done it many times. He can play Johnson if he has to on the right of a 3. So I think he feels like he has enough, at least until the summer. He may want to, if he's even here. We'll just assume he's here. He may feel he has enough until the summer, and then he can go get the centre back he really wants in the summer. So I think he feels he has enough cover there, probably with everybody fit. But it's not ideal. There's no doubt in that. I don't think Kerr so far we've seen has been up to it at Premier League level. He is mistake prone. I think even against Derby, excuse me, last night he got into a muddle with Areola, which could have cost us. So he looks like an accident waiting to happen a lot of the time, Kerr. So I don't think that's working out. So I think Kerr probably will be off in the summer again. But yeah, I suspect he feels like he just has enough players there to play those positions. I don't think he's too worried about it at the moment.
I'm nervous about that. Before I hand it over to Mike and what he thinks about it, obviously who's the replacement for Craig Dawson. I'm nervous about this because someone just said it in the chat there. I think George just said it, or Robert, I think it was. It's this. As if everyone's fit. Like, we haven't even hit the heavy schedule yet at West Ham, like the Thursday, Sunday, sort of flying around and doing that. And then obviously FA Cup and all involved. So I'm nervous about this. I hope West Ham have got this right. I do agree with what Mike said just a minute ago about, are you going to really invest a lot of money into the club now when you could be selling it in for 4 months' time? Do you know what I mean? So this is a dangerous game that we're playing, I believe.
It is. I'll tell you what, James, if that's what they're doing, if we actually end up getting relegated, if they allow Moyes to stay in the job and we're in the relegation zone, by the time they bring in a new manager, he's got a job on his hands, especially if the teams around us are really picking up and starting to pick up regular points. They could put us in a really horrible position, and they could end up shooting themselves in the foot, because if they really do want to move this club on and sell it in the summer, if we end up being a championship team, I mean, the price of the club is going to plummet. If we're a championship team, and then, we're going to have a fire sale of all our players, a huge amount of them will have to leave. We'll have to completely restructure the squad. They're playing a bloody dangerous game if they're crossing their fingers that Moyes will pull us out of this.
Yeah, I agree. Mike, what do you reckon on the Craig Dawson replacement there? Because we've seen people like Kehrer, who, let's be honest, I praised him up at the start of the season when we signed him, and I sort of ate a bit of pie, lots of it. But what do you make of it?
Yeah, so I probably have a different view on the whole Dawson one than a lot. But the way I look at it is, unless we're playing a 3, it's not necessarily a bad decision. So if we're going to play a 4 at the back most of the season, what we're really saying about is, why haven't we gone and replaced our 4th to 5th choice centre-back? Arguably, when they got Luzial as well. So, Kehrer is 4th choice, arguably bumped up to that. Now, Luzial is meant to be a good Brazilian kid. Obviously, they're obviously going to dump in the under-21s, and they're not going to play him until next year, if at all. But when I look at it logically and coldly, what we're complaining about is us not replacing a 4th to 5th choice centre-back. Now, does that impact us? Arguably, no. Now, obviously, we have problems with injuries with Zuma and Ogbonna that we can't necessarily rely on them. So from that standpoint, I understand why people want to replace. But I also look at it as in, do we spend money now on a player that is not necessarily someone we're going to want in the summer? And that's where I'm with that view.
The only thing with that, Mike, that I understand what you're saying, but I look at it, one injury to a key player at the back, and our system is all over the gaff. Like, you have to put Cresswell in there.
If you move to the back 3 again, Cresswell's played as a left centre-back. So again, it kind of is, but it isn't, because all of a sudden you've got Emerson can play left side. You've got Ben Johnson who can play at either full-back or either wing-back position. So in actual fact, it seems like it's a risk and it's a wrong turn, but ultimately he has options because he could move Johnson right centre back, could move Cresswell left centre back if one of the centre backs gets injured. Obviously, if one gets injured, we still
agreed. But I don't think it's a risk numbers wise.
Yeah,
I think
agree
we're
on that.
really risking it quality wise. You know, if Zuma's out, you don't want to be relying on Kehrer, frankly.
I would, but I don't think
Ben Johnson,
Ben
Johnson, you know, at right back and right wing back, Safel at right wing back, they're not good options. It's not just about being able to put somebody there. We need to have the requisite quality, you know, and we don't have it right now. I think the full-back positions are a real problem.
Whilst I agree, I do think we over compliment on Dawson. I do think he's a good player, but he has got mistakes in him. The Leeds game, for example, both those goals came from him stepping out of position and being completely out of place. That's the prime example. And those errors have started to creep in more this year. He is a bit of a better passer than Zuma, but again, I don't think it's as big a loss as many think. He has a lot of similarities to Big Ginge, who was loved because he was an all or nothing player, but he would give you problems and would give up mistakes. And that's why I kind of feel I'm not as bothered as others about it, because I do think, yes, we can switch things around. And I do understand about the other qualities. But again, Dawson can't cover for a slow right back or wing back.
The only problem with it, Mike, I just want to say this, the only problem with it that I have is that we've really only got Zuma, Abona, and Aguerd, who are natural centre halves. The other ones are not really centre halves. Like Kehrer is not a centre half. Like Cresswell's not a centre half. Even Ben Johnson, for instance, is not a centre half. Like we're shoehorning these players in. And the best way of summing this up is we've got 3 centre halves there who have all been injured this season, right? And one of them's injured now. So it's like, I understand what you're saying about Dawson, but Dawson was a natural centre half. He knew his job. If West Ham were playing a 4 at the back and not playing a 3, I would agree with you 100%. I'd say, you know what, you're right. We don't need him. We can get round it. But Moyes is continuously playing a 3 now instead of a 4. So we've got a bit of a problem, haven't we?
I think it's like the first lockdown season where we played a good mixture of a 3 and a 4. I think it's going to be game to game. We're going to change that. In the games against the big teams, we'll play a 3 at the back because he's going to want that extra level security. In other games, he's going to want to play a 4. The only times I ever see him playing a 3 outside of, say, the bigger teams or the ones who have more control of the ball is going to be in games where he's maybe looking to go like for like. So I think it's going to be a bit of an even split. That's why, again, I'm not wedded to the thing of getting a player, because there was a lot of talk around Maguire. And we were talking about this before on Babylon, is that, yes, Maguire will be a decent player for us because we play a low block, which really suits him. But if Maguire comes in, we have to play 3 at the back. Then the problem is, then we have to address the fullback problem. Then we also have to look at what we're going to do from a midfield perspective. Are we going to go to 2 or are we going to go to a 3? So if we go to a 2, then we have to look at, do we have the right players at a wing to kind of get there? So it opened up a lot of questions. And it also came to the fact of, well, if we're going to play a 4, does Maguire start over Zuma? And is Zuma going to go to the bench? So it's one of those that, people are clamoring for the idea, but it's like, okay, but when you look at it from a squad perspective, how's he fitting? Because he's not going to leave United to go to West Ham to be on the bench or play second fiddle to Zuma. And whilst we understand Zuma's got injury problems, it's Zuma and Aguerd are our starters regardless. And it's about who you slot in. And if we go to a 3 at the back, we don't then arguably have enough players or the right players in which to get the most out of that formation. So it's one of those deals that I was always on the fence of, because I looked at it from a sense of, if he comes in, does it disrupt us to go into a 3? Does it disrupt what we're trying to do or what we have tried to do? And if we go to a back 4, is he or Zuma going to be happy dropping out the team? Because again, I don't think at the moment can be dropped, because
he can't be.
So comfortable and he's improving us in possession. So again, that's why when I look at the defence, I'm kind of like, it's not for me as much as the issue centrally. It's more about the fullbacks, and then it's about
I agree on that.
We get the ball through midfield, and also we have no backup at all for Bowen.
Let's talk about the fullbacks, because we've let one go in Harrison Ashby. For me,
tonight as well. He's already out on loan, but it could be Longelo could be also going to Birmingham permanently. It's just been announced.
Oh.
I've got to ask you about Harrison Ashby. Now, listen, I've watched Harrison Ashby for a long time. I followed his progress over Dagenham and Redbridge for a good few years when they was playing over there. He was the brightest one out of the lot of them. He was the best one out of the lot of them, really. When I'm looking at the talent, what West Ham had over there, you could just tell he looked like he was going to go to a level. How disappointed are you to lose him for £3 million? Because I am disappointed because I look at the right back situation right now. I look at Ben Johnson, I look at Kufal, and I look at Kera, and I think he could have competed with all three of them. If I'm being honest, what do you think, Tommy? I'll ask you first about Harrison Ashby.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Ashby. I think he's got lots of talent and lots of potential. I'm really, really disappointed that the situation has got to this where he just wanted out and that was it. That there was no kind of fixing it. And to sell him on to Newcastle, I expect him to do really well. I do expect him to make it at Newcastle and to take over that position from Trippier. I think he's got lots of talent. I think it's kind of shameful, actually, that he hasn't been really given any opportunity at West Ham to prove himself. I think he should have been given an opportunity. Like, start of this season, Kufal was dreadful. Absolutely dreadful.
Yeah,
and we've seen Johnson has had numerous chances at right back and hasn't pulled up any trees. I mean, defensively, he's solid enough, but offers really nothing going forward. And Ashby has always looked like a much better kind of package defensively and getting forward in attack. And I thought this is a perfect opportunity to show him that, look, there is a pathway for you if you prove yourself good enough. If you can come in and if you can do a good job, show that you're worthy of being here. He would have been absolutely up for that. He would have been chomping at the bit to prove himself. And he may well have done that. He may well potentially right now be ahead of in the pecking order, ahead of Sofal and Johnson potentially. I think he's got that much talent. I think he's brilliant. Really disappointed, and I just don't understand why he was never given that opportunity, particularly when we were really in need at that position. I mean, we were so bad at right back, particularly in the early part of the season, and we were struggling so badly with results too. I mean, the season was going so badly, and I mean, it was a perfect opportunity to say, right, Ashby, here's your opportunity, son. Show us what you've got. And you know, he may have stood up to that challenge and being the player that we all kind of felt he might be. And the fact that we still don't know is criminal.
Yeah, I agree. I really do. I see Richard in the chat there saying to me, "James, you've taken the Ashby one so well." I haven't really took it so well, but obviously I've had other things on my mind. But for me, £3 million is peanuts for a player that I think could go on to be another Kieran Trippier, in my opinion. I think he could be really, really good. What do you make of it, Mike, in regards of Ashby?
Yeah, I understand what people are saying. 3 million is nothing, but we've got to consider if it went to tribunal, we're probably getting less than that.
Less, yeah.
So, in all honesty, with 6 months to go, £3 million on a player who's not had a Premier League debut yet. Only 3 professional performances for West Ham. You have to say that that's pretty good going. We've got £1 million per performance in the first team.
Or on the other hand, Mike, Newcastle have got an unbelievable deal in the long run. If he turns out to be the player we think he might be, I tell you what, they'll look back and how much do you pay for him?
Don't worry, I'll be getting on to that. Don't worry. But, you know, we've also got a sell-on clause. So if he does well at Newcastle and he doesn't quite make the grade Newcastle selling, we'll get a bit of cash, an extra cash out of it. So,
yeah,
from the perspective of where we are currently, it's a good deal. But he's a big fan of Trippier, apparently. He's going to learn from Trippier. And Newcastle and Eddie Howe, well, Eddie Howe in particular, will play youth. So he is going to get opportunities. Maybe not in the short to medium term this season, but in the following season. I love that type of comment. It always makes me laugh because
me too.
Everyone says Diangana was a waste. How? The kid was 6 months away from being released before Pellegrini put him in the team. He played in the team, got a good loan, and we sold him for £12 million. That is how you use your youth system. You use them in that you bring the top players of that team, even the ones that are just on the edge of going out, You bring them up to then get them in the team, play them enough that they then get either a good loan deal where then you can earn money on them. That's how you treat your youth system if you can't bring in the next Declan Rice, even the next Johnson from our perspective. So that's how you have to use a youth system. Yeah. But with Ashby, he was given a debut 3 years ago, got denied a loan deal last year when we had injuries, told he'd be around the squad and didn't play. So, yeah, apparently they just talked about his attitude being a problem, but also you can understand a young player being annoyed when they've had a debut 3 years ago.
Yeah.
18 months later, they're thinking they've got a chance in the squad because they've been told we're going to keep you around. And then you're told you're not. Oh, actually, you're not going to play any games. We're going to keep moving Johnson left back and right back, and we're going to play a half-fit Sofal. You can understand why a player gets frustrated. And also there are other rumours as well.
Is this more on Moyes or is this on Ashby? Like, because the way I look at this,
I think it's
I look at the three players that West Ham have at right back. We got Kufal. I'll start off with Kufal first. Kufal has got better recently, but at the start of the season he was awful. He was really, really awful. Ben Johnson, for me, is massively overhyped, in my opinion. I think people rate him to a level which I've never seen, really. I think he's a good average Premier League footballer, but he's nothing amazing. And then we've got Tilo Kehrer, who everyone doesn't want in the team because they know there's a mistake in him all the time. So I look at Ashby and I think Ashby's young, he's fresh, he's raw, he can go forward, he's got great pace, great delivery. And Moyes just doesn't play him, like in any game really. Like, and this is going into even the conference qualifiers. Like, do you know what I mean? He just doesn't get a look in. So is it really on Ashby or is this on Moyes for denying Ashby the opportunity to play?
I think it's both. Moyes is a big thing on attitude. So if there's something about his attitude that he didn't like, that pretty much screws you straight away. I think Johnson, as an example, has been also another player that has had his development stunted. He has shown patches where he can develop. So I think a lot of the criticism given to Johnson is also unfair because it's a player that gets brought in and out all the time, regardless of how good his attitude's been, regardless of how good he's been. And his development's been stunted to play players like Cresswell and Sufal, who haven't been at the top of their game. And even last year, even when people were saying that Cresswell was doing well, I personally didn't really see it. And
on top of that, Mike, I mean, he's also been asked to play 5 or 6 different positions. I mean, if you're a youngster coming into a team, say as a right back, as Ben is, the only way for you to develop is to get game time in that position and to learn and grow into that position. I mean, he's been asked to learn to be a right back, a centre back, a wing back on both sides, a left back. He played in defensive midfield once. I mean, you can't possibly develop as a youngster in 5 positions and become great at them all. You end up becoming a utility player who can play all these positions but isn't brilliant in any one of them.
You become a John
if he'd been brought in as a right back and played at right back and allowed to develop as a right back, he might be much further along the road now. I mean, he's been given an impossible task, really.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. You've got a young player who has shown promise, and it was also a period whenever he played, I think we pretty much won when he was playing. Or we certainly didn't lose. I think we went for a really good long stint with him in our team on either fullback position. And at the moment he came out, we lost. And I think there's a lot of things that with Johnson that, yes, there are elements of his game that needs to improve, but we concentrate so much on the weak points of his game, or the games or the parts that need to be polished, that we ignore the things he does well. Like last night, there was a lot of calls said about how bad he was, but there was nothing said about the amazing first-time cross he put in for Bowen, who didn't expect it to come in quickly, and they cleared it out, which would have been an assist had Bowen got across. And he defended brilliantly in the game. I
can say I criticised him last night on this channel, and I was quite open and honest about it. The only thing I will say about that, Mike, is the lack of inconsistency this man has got. He's inconsistent all the time. One minute he's very, very good.
Again, we're talking about consistency. You can't blame a player for having consistency when he has no match fitness, because he gets put in the team for one game. He's out of it for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, put back in again for an injury. If he does well, he's then not given the next game. He's then straight back out. And then people complain and saying, well, why is he not consistent? Well, how can you be consistent? It's like saying you're doing a job, you're a plasterer, and you go, yeah, I only plaster once a week or one day a week. It's just like, well, of course you're not going to get better. Of course it's not going to be as refined as someone who's doing it every single day. You've not got the match practice. So I find it funny when players that are in and out of the team are consistently hammered about, that's inconsistent, or you've got that pass right. Well, of course you are. You've not got your range in. It's hard to get your eye in.
So what makes him get in the team and stay there?
One, defensively, he's the stronger fullback that we have. Whether he plays left side, right side, he's the strongest defensive fullback we have. So essentially,
I think it would take a long-term injury to Safal.
But that's the problem. It will take an injury for Moyes to give him that go. Last year, he gave him a chance, and last year he played well. He got a lot more games and was actually starting to develop quite well, particularly at left back. He was quite good at left back, getting forward and causing havoc. A lot of people say about him being bad in the attacking third. He has the best accuracy of all of our fullbacks from crossing. Like statistically, has the best accuracy of all of them. So as much as people say he's terrible or he's bad, statistically, the opinions don't back that up because statistically he is our best crosser from fullback.
But the thing is, though, with that, the only thing I will say with that is that if you're playing different teams, you're like the statistics are going to look better if you're playing a lesser team. Like if he's playing
but this is also last year. So this is last year's team. He's playing the Premier League, Europa League. He's statistically still better than any of our fullbacks from crosses and accuracy. So this is what I mean. It's that when you compare players, sometimes it's easy to get lost in the opinions of it and sometimes not look at statistics. Some statistics are misleading. I completely agree. But others, when you look at them, actually can really cut through a lot of opinions on actually as to, well, this player's a really good crosser, that's a bad crosser. Or if you look at the accuracy levels, will tell you often what they are.
Yeah.
Again, there's other statistics and other things you have to look at in which to really show how potent it is. But ultimately, there's a lot of conversations had that are not necessarily as informed as they could be, or slightly misaligned because they've taken one statistic in isolation and then not looked at the other things that kind of bring that up and then show the true picture.
Yeah, I think as well, you can kind of get an idea into your head about a player, and it can be hard to shift. I've been guilty of this myself. You get an idea in your head about a player, and it can be hard to shift that idea.
Yes, so it's in the scouting world, it's called unconscious bias. That's what it's called. So it's like if you don't like Harry Kane because he plays for Tottenham, if you see him do something wrong, he's terrible at that. Because unconsciously, an unconscious bias says that's what you're going to say. And it's like when you look at lesser leagues, you see a player, say, coming from Portugal, you go, he's not going to be that good because the Premier League's too physical. So you put a bias on a player based on a preconceived notion of what that division is and other factors as well.
Yeah. See, the thing is with me, in regards to Ben Johnson, I look at him sometimes and I do see there's mistakes there. Like, there's a lot of mistakes there. Do you know what I'm saying? And I understand what you're saying, but like, I look at Kafal, for instance. We use Kafal as a prime example. Start of the season, he was awful. And the last month, he's been all right. He's been pretty good. With Ben, it's up and down. It's always up and down with him. Like, it's never... And this is like last season, fair enough, because the team was in a good moment last season. But this season, he has not been good at all.
Again,
last night,
consistency again about being in the team.
Yeah, it's difficult when you get thrown in just every once in a while.
Yeah. I think that's where my problem is with some of the things on Ben Johnson, because he's making mistakes. Yeah. Again, if you're not match fit, you're not going to make those decisions, or you're going to make a wrong decision because maybe you're mentally you're not up to speed.
What would you say his best position is, Mike?
I do think it is right back, to be honest.
Yeah.
Although, having said that, he tends to play better at left back. So, it's one of those ones where we probably are better off developing on the left side, especially if we're going to play a back four, because Emerson and Cresswell, I don't think you can trust defensively. Ben Johnson tends to go forward better as a left back. So, you would probably say him playing there is better. Also, when you look at the trajectory of where fullbacks are playing, having a player, a right-footed player who can use his left foot on that side is quite good, because then you can start to invert them, bring them in field and start to overload in midfield because we tend to get overrun quite a bit, or we're poor in possession. If you have a fullback that can come inside, and there's a great thing, if you've ever seen it, there's Arteta talking about how he likes passes to work, right? And he talks about every single time he wants a pass, he wants it to be diagonal. So it's never fullback straight line. It's all diagonal passes, because then players are ready to attack.
Yeah.
So it's those kind of things that when you move players around and get them to essentially create better angles for players to come onto the ball, or you can create overloads, it means you can start to open up a lot more the teams and the spaces to go and attack teams. And these are the types of things that you need to kind of look at, which is something we don't do. We're very formulaic, and we have fullbacks, they bomb up and down, up and down. That's their role. There's no real kind of freedom to essentially open up the pitch and to create those overloads to then start to then bring more into your team. And when you look at like what Arteta's doing at Arsenal, he's doing fantastic things because he is making his fullbacks invert and making.
So would you say, Mike, that if West Ham was to go out and get another manager, for instance, another manager would get a better Ben Johnson than what we're already seeing?
100%. Because I think as much as Moyes is I think the way I look at Moyes is he's a good manager as such. He can get a team together, but I don't think he's a great coach. And I think nowadays you're seeing a lot more managers, so the likes of Arteta, Vincent Kompany, who are coaches as well. So it's all about bringing through that idea. And obviously Arteta's learned from Guardiola, who again is like a coach as well as a manager. And I think that's the game is leading to that. When you look at those two guys, you look at De Zerbi as well. And you even look at Steele, who is doing amazing work at Reims.
Brilliant.
You know, it's those kind of guys that teach players and also allow them to make mistakes. And I think that's another thing that we have with Moyes. Moyes doesn't like mistakes being made. And mistakes for him is also a misplaced pass, or you're forcing a pass that gets intercepted. It's not necessarily a mistake. It's a player trying something. But
I noticed actually last night in the game, Fornells tried a long diagonal ball out to Bowen that didn't come off, and Moyes was roaring at him. Moyes was roaring at him for trying the pass, and I'm thinking, surely we can want our players trying those passes.
Exactly.
Who cares? You know, okay, it didn't come off this time. Maybe next time he puts Bowen clean through. And I mean, if a manager's going to be shouting at you for trying something, then that's absolutely mad.
It's not, is it? Let's be honest. You want your players to express themselves.
Start playing the high percentage passes, the simpler passes. You know, the short passes.
You play those small little passes that don't really get you anywhere, not really penetrative, and you actually then have possession for possession's sake.
Yeah. Whereas, if I'm on the sideline, I'm applauding him. I'm saying, right idea, Pablo.
At least he's thinking outside the box, basically, instead of being like a robot and continuing to do the same thing. Talking about last night, there's one man who got back to scoring last night, and that's Mikel Antonio, and he's been rumoured to be staying, going. Looks like he's going to be staying now. Tommy, what do you think on Mikel Antonio, mate? Because last night I thought he was all right. I thought he done all right last night. And that's Derby, but you got to respect it. Like, he had a go, he scored a decent goal, right, a tap-in. But what is it you want to see from Mikel Antonio moving forward now? Because he looks like he's going to be here to the end of the season.
Yeah, I think the club would have been willing to release him had we brought another striker in. But I don't think there was any great desire to get him out the club or anything. I think he will go in the summer. He'll move on. But I never expect much from him, to be honest. I mean, I'm not going to count last night. It's away to a League One team who didn't play particularly well. I thought Derby were going to be better than they were, actually, to be honest. I thought that Derby were quite poor, actually, and didn't really offer much last night. So it's a game he should be kind of playing well in fairness. So I wouldn't count that too much last night. I don't think it means Antonio's back. I mean, he'll probably very likely start against Newcastle, and I doubt he'll get much change out of them. I think they haven't conceded since October. And, they concede very, very few goals, Newcastle. So, I think he's past his prime. I don't think he offers a whole lot. I mean, he was never really a prolific goal scorer anyway, apart from one spell in the early games of last season. But his goals have almost completely dried up now. But what he did offer was he was an absolute bully before. He had that energy, non-stop running. He'd run down the flanks, hold up the ball. He'd be an absolute nuisance. But I think he's even lost a lot of that now, to be honest. He seems a bit lost a lot of the time out on the pitch now. He's not having the impact outside of his goal scoring that used to kind of still make it almost worth having him on the pitch, regardless of a lack of goals. I just don't even see that from him anymore, to be completely honest. I think, players get to a certain point where they hit the wall.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, now Mikel has hit the wall, it seems to me. So I don't expect much from him. Having to play him against Newcastle is far from ideal. He's highly unlikely to score. He's highly unlikely to have the kind of impact in the game that he used to be able to have at that level. So I think his time is up, really, and it's a damn shame that we've got Scamacca and Ings injured, because I don't think Antonio would get a sniff anymore. I think even Moyes knows he's beyond it now, and I think that's why he wanted Ings in. I think he wanted to have a backup for Scamacca who wasn't Antonio. Unfortunately, it looks like we might have to start with him against Newcastle. It doesn't help us, unfortunately. I think he's just past it at this point, I'm afraid to say.
I agree with what you said. Before I hand it over to Mike, I just want to say this. There is no transfer news, people. I see Dan Hammer's saying that. There is none. Basically, West Ham look like the doors are shut. The bank is shut for tonight. And Sullivan's not getting out any pound notes anytime soon. On Mikel Antonio, for me, if he plays how he played last night for the remainder of the season, I will respect that. I will say that. He had a go last night. He was running around. And we are going to need this man, right? A lot of people are very mixed with him. I've been very mixed with him. I've had many debates with West Ham online all the time about Mikel Antonio. But he's going to be in there to the end of the season. So we're going to need him in Europe, in the Prem, in the FA Cup. We're going to need the man. At the end of the season, it'd be nice to do something towards the back end of the season, either win something or make sure we stay in this league, and then we can wave him goodbye with 8-9 years of service of what he's done. So for me, I'm glad he's still here. Like, we haven't just gone out and just gone to grab someone for the sake of grabbing someone. I do agree with what Mike said earlier on. Why are we going for a player in France who doesn't want to come to England? It smells of a phantom bid, in my opinion. But Mike, Mikel Antonio, mate.
Yeah, so let's face it, Antonio's a bit of an enigma, isn't he, at best of times? This season, I think he's done a bit too much talking, a little less, trying to improve his game and to unsettle competition through right means. And by right means, I mean outperforming in training, outperforming on the pitch. I think he's been a little bit too much making a big thing of himself, and which his performances haven't backed up. If he puts himself about like he did yesterday, and he essentially looks to play with that same level of concentration and conviction, then he will be a useful player for us. If he's going to be put out a joint when both Ings and Scamacca come back, and he's going to be essentially, from what I've seen when he's been out of possession, uninterested and only actually making any kind of moves when it's close to him, then we're almost better without him. We're almost better, in fact, just going, Mubamba, maybe this is your chance to go in that team and,
I agree,
run yourself into the ground, young man, and just go out there as a sub. But yeah, look, he's staying to the end of the year. It can only be a good thing if he's heart in it. If he's half-hearted, then that's how it is, isn't it? I just think we need players to be committed. If he's not fully committed, we were better off letting him go, in all honesty, regardless of what it meant. Because you can't have a passenger in a team, especially in the way we are.
Could he be our new covering right winger for you?
I think that's probably his route in once Scamacca and Ings come back. I don't think he gets in over those two. But again,
I'd do that on Saturday. I'd move Antonio out to the right wing and play Bowen up top. I think
it also comes down to if we play a three at the back. Because if we play a three at the back and we want to then play three in the middle, well, you have to play two up top. Yeah. So then his avenue is to try and be the partner to either Scamacca or Ings, and that's going to be his avenue. So I think, again, that's what it comes down to, is to what is our defensive structure going to be? What is our midfield structure going to be? If we're going to play a 3 and a 3, then we have to play Antonio up top with someone, or Antonio is going to have to be back up to both Ings and Scamacca. So, I think his route is either being as part of a 2-man front strike force, or having to be a winger. And I think even it's been reported that Scamacca was even suggesting to Moyes that why do you not put Bowen on the left and put Antonio on the right, get them to running at defenders and actually whipping it in with their stronger foot, rather than always constantly have to have players cutting in. Because essentially what he's saying is by the time they cut in, their defenders are able to get in and structured. But if you can get down the byline and whip it in, then you've got more chance to go and attack it. So
they're always going to run into traffic, aren't they, Mike? Let's be honest. Every time they're running in, they're always going to cut inside to people who's there instead of coming down the side and coming across the goal, rather than, do you know what I mean? Like,
exactly. And it's just, that's how we are at the moment. We just no sense in that final third. That's how to break people down.
I agree, mate. I really do. People in the chat, put your questions in for Mike and Tommy. I've enjoyed this, I must admit. I really do agree on Antonio. Like, I think Antonio would be ideal for a right winger. I do agree with Tommy. I would play the Bowen up front with a bit of pace. Like, if we do go 2 up front, then Bowen and Antonio, fair enough. When Ings and Scamacca get fit, it'd be interesting to know what sort of 2 West Ham would play. Like, Scamacca would probably play, but who'd you really go with? Antonio
Ings
or Ings?
Ings. Reason being is because Antonio tends to try and play too much for his back to goal now. And I think if you have a 2-man, please, I don't think Antonio looks as comfortable when he runs anymore as he used to. He doesn't have that burst. Whereas I think if you had played Scamacca with the likes of Ings, Ings will constantly be looking to get in behind. Yeah. And he'll constantly be looking to kind of get on those kind of knockdowns. Scamacca will be constantly looking to drop short. So all of a sudden, what it also does is if you have those 2 as a strike force, if one is constantly running in behind whilst the other one's dropping, the defence has got 2 options. Either they split and they go, well, we're going to push up, try and play a high line, try and play you off, or we drop. Now, if they drop, that means all of a sudden, Scamacca can drop into a slot where he's completely free to get the ball and turn. That could also mean someone else is able to get in there. So maybe Souček can run in behind with Ings. And all of a sudden, you have a centre forward who's incredibly good on the ball, very good passer, very good technically, who can sit and dictate and pull other players in. And you can get the blunt instrument Souček getting into the box where he's at his best. And you've got Danny Ings looking for any half chance in the area. And again, as I say, the more you have a player who can run in behind, that means the more space you're going to create between their midfield and defence. If they're anticipating you're going to hit it long sometimes, it means you can have variation as well. You can play into feet and hit it long, and you keep a defence guessing. So I think that is what I would go with. I think Antonio's a great player to bring on in that last 20, where you can just say you have 20 minutes to just go and run your absolute heart out. And I think that's probably the best way to use Antonio. He probably won't agree and like that, but for me at this stage, I think that's the best way to use him.
I agree. What do you reckon, Tommy, on that?
Yeah, I'd be thinking along the same lines. I'm really excited. If Moyes is going to continue with the wing-back system, then I'd be really excited to see Ings and Scamacca up top. It's been a long time at West Ham since we've seen a really good strike partnership, and I think those 2 actually would work very well together for the exact reasons you were just saying. Actually, I think the way they would dovetail with each other would cause real problems for centre backs, and I think that we would score more goals because of it. I mean, they're both finishers. We've seen that, and if they can strike up an understanding about each other's game, and obviously they'll work together in training on that. And if they can implement that in games, I mean, the potential for goals there is fantastic. And I would love to see that going forward when they're both fit. I would love to see them both on the pitch at the same time. I think one of the frustrating things for us is that we've seen the ability that Scamacca has and the potential that he can bring to this team, but he hasn't been able to flourish and to really express it because he's just been too isolated. But if we can get Danny Ings up there alongside him, someone he can work with and dovetail with, as a strike partnership. I mean, the potential there for goals is fantastic, and it could transform us. It really could, just for having those two up there together. And I'd love to see that when they're both back fit.
I agree. I've got a question here from Snazzy. Question for the lads. Do you think Moyes legitimately lost a big part of the dressing room, and what game was it in? Do you think he's lost the dressing room, Mike?
Yeah, and it was at the Brighton game last season. He turned around at the end of that Brighton game and said categorically, and he even said it in an interview, that he told players that they need to decide whether they want to be at West Ham next year. Got to remember there was a Soufal tweet not long after that game saying, thanks very much for this season. Hope to see you all again next year. That tweet came out after it was what Moyes said, after it came out that Moyes had quite a brutal essentially shouting match in the dressing room after that Brighton game because of how poor it was, saying that players weren't playing, they were on their holidays, they need to decide whether they want to be part of West Ham. You could see that hangover coming into the season. Soufal's head wasn't there.
See it in the friendlies, yeah.
Look at Fornals. How many times have you seen Fornals smiling over the course of the season? Ben Johnson's not signing a contract. There are loads of little breadcrumbs, if you follow, that show that it isn't a happy camp. And that was a game where he essentially started it. And there were niggles throughout the year because players played all over the shop and not used in their actual preferred positions the previous year. But we were doing well, so there's no need to gripe. You maybe have a little conversation here and there, but you're not going to have true gripes. Brighton game set a ball in motion. We came back, and let's face it, Souček had a contract denied by Moyes. That was quite public.
Yeah.
And yet he didn't want Soufal, technically, because he said the contract was too big, didn't want him, and yet he was a first team player and he couldn't be dropped. Mixed message. Soufal was apparently, by that conversation again, he was concerned about his future. Obviously, came back and probably, because Moyes is quite aloof, he is a bit cold, probably were cold to players that he had to go at.
Yeah, but why though? On one game though, Mike, was that?
That was the Brighton one. Apparently, he turned around to a lot of players and said, you need to go and think about yourself, think about whether you want to be at West Ham next year. And he's also having serious concerns about players and thinking about shaking it up. So we've got to think, when you've had a team that had no real competition for 2 years to 18 months in some cases, to all of a sudden be told the team's going to get shaken up and you might not be part of it, you're going to change your mentality because you're just thinking, well, we've just had a great season. We've had a really bad game here. But to be fair, in the league, we've been pretty piss poor at that point for most of that year. All of a sudden, you're going, what can I trust this manager? Because he's already saying that he maybe doesn't have faith in me. Come back into the season, there's already that conversation or already that thought that you're maybe not my man. And I know we had injuries, but when you look at how much players were dropped in and out constantly, and even players that were told that could probably go, such as Souček, you're still playing. Your future's still a bit up in the air as to, well, am I part of this team? Am I part of this? Am I just playing because no one else wants to come in? Obviously, Fornals. Again, look at Fornals. Ever present.
Fornals to me, and me and Tommy, I've known Tommy a long time, doing the YouTube game. Yeah. And me and Tommy have had many fucking arguments over the years, right, discussing Pablo Fornals, right? I've never been his biggest fan, but on this occasion, I could hold my hand up and say that he should be playing. Like in certain games against big six opposition, there's been games this season where he should have been in this team, and he's just been cast aside like he's nothing really.
We've got to look at Lanzini as well. Last year, he was again another important player. Can't get in the team. Even Downs, who's been playing well. So I think there are unsettled players. Probably not to the point where they're causing eruptions, but they're unsettled. Declan Rice is clearly unsettled and already got 1.5 eye on leaving the club. Yeah. So it's not a happy dressing room, no matter what is put out by days and so on. There is enough breadcrumbs that if you follow, you'll find out that it's not a happy camp.
Yeah, I think there are a number of players who know that in an ideal world, Moyes would have moved them on already. He doesn't really want them there. They're still there and they're still getting some games because he just hasn't been able to replace them yet. And I think they know that as soon as he gets the chance to get them out the door and replace them, that he will. And so it's hard to kind of get your head right to play for a manager when you feel like you're in that situation. Again, your head is already on your next move. Is like, where am I going to go to? Because Moyes is going to dump me as soon as he can. Whether it's going to be in January, is he going to get rid of me in January? So Fel was already talking about moving to Germany, in this transfer window, and so this is obviously going to cause a serious issue within the camp, and so I think Mike is spot on there. I think there are certain players there that already know he doesn't really want them there.
Yeah, and I think there's probably players now that are waiting and biding their time for when he goes as well. So, I don't think the camp's that happy. Results haven't helped, but I think he lost a good piece of it the end of last season with how he blew up on the players, and he even said it in press conference that he had a lot of home truths with players after that game and asked them if their hearts were in it. So you think after the season you just had, and to be confronted with that kind of conversation.
Yeah, and as a player, of course, I mean, it's one thing for the manager to talk about you not quite being in the best of form at the moment and stuff like that. And you can criticize players in certain ways as a manager, and they're okay with it. They're professionals, but there are also certain things you can't ever do with a player if you're going to keep them around. And
you've got to keep your players on side, ain't you? Really?
And one of the worst things you can do as a manager is to question the player's desire to win a game or commitment on the pitch, because I don't believe any player ever wants to lose a game. I think any professional player, I mean, I never played professionally. I played in the local leagues here, and anytime I went out on the pitch, like I had a few managers, I didn't like all of them, but anytime I went out on the pitch, I didn't not care about losing. I always wanted to go and play well, and I always wanted to win a game of football. And professionals are even bigger on it than I would ever be. No player wants to go out on the pitch and lose a game, because I think we've seen it this season as well. Like I think what Mike is saying there is absolutely spot on, that he has lost a lot of the players. But whenever you see them go out on the pitch, they still try and win. You can see that they're still trying. The effort is still there. None of them have down tools. To be fair to them, none of them have down tools, because professional players hate losing. They didn't get to that level of the game by being blasé about whether they won or lost a game. They care, and they hate losing. They want to win a game when they go out on the pitch. They have that competitive nature. They don't want to roll over for anybody. And so to question their desire to win a game, or question whether they care if they win or lose, or question their heart, I think that's when you lose a player, like, straight away. It's very hard for a manager to come back from that in a player's eyes.
Who would you say, Mike, was the main players he sort of targeted? Because you know what, I want to be honest, I never really knew about that. I knew something could happen, but I never knew it sort of blew up the way you've described it.
So I think, obviously, Soufal, you've got to say Soufal is part of that because of his message. Clearly states that he was possibly a player targeted. I think, again, you just go on body language and what you see from players. You would have to say that maybe Fornals was another one, maybe questioned. Obviously, Antonio come back with a different attitude.
And actually, sorry, Mike, to cut you off. It just occurred to me here that, on top of all that, it's a bit rich to say that to players that you've been flogging all season.
I agree.
I mean, they must have been just out on their feet. The amount of games they had to play was crazy. And this is coming from a manager who failed to strengthen the team in January. These guys out and give them a little break or something. I mean, it's ridiculous to flog them the way he did, and then wonder why they're really flat, in the second half of the season.
No, you've just gone out in the Frankfurt game. After that point, they were struggling you could see they were struggling to get that motivation to keep going in the league season. But as you say, they were flogged to death. Like, when we had injuries, players were just constantly played. And
I agree.
Yeah, I think a fair few have been. I think a few are unhappy. Some are probably against Moyes. I think just some others are just unhappy with the situation at the club. But as we said, he stopped a contract for Souček even when they were starting to negotiate. Soufal only has his contract is up, although we've got an extension, but we haven't seemingly done the extension either. So again, either we're not approaching him to have that conversation about extending, or he just has said, I don't want to do it. So I just think, as I say, there's enough breadcrumbs to say there are certain players, and I think you have to, when you look at younger players that are not signing contracts or looking to get away, that's also an indication of what's going on at the club, or the feeling within the club that you're not necessarily going to be promoted through. Ben Johnson's 22 years old. Let's remember, we've only played one player who's under the age of 21 all season in the Premier League. Yeah. And that was Divine for about 5-10 minutes against Arsenal. So we categorically don't play youth. So again, we're not getting that new injection of just someone who's coming in with just pure excitement and buzzing to be a part of, in that professional atmosphere. And we can't discount as well the lack of Noble or no Noble for that period. Going from Noble to Declan Rice is a massive transition. I know Rice was captain, but there's a lot of stuff that Noble did with those players in the dressing room, just personally with them. And he's no longer there for those little personal touches to maybe put an arm around a player and say, look, yeah, right, let's have a bitch about the boss, and go over and say, wait, let's have a chat about them.
Do you think his ego? Do you think David Moyes' ego has become bigger than his station, basically? Because for me, the way you're saying it is like, this is a man who come from nowhere. His management career was dead before he arrived at West Ham. He had 2 good seasons with us, and towards the back end of the season, he's basically, I think he thinks he's bigger now than he's ever been, basically. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't think he's got above himself. He's always had that. He had that at Everton, that pretty much brush it off, don't care. But I think in most managers is that thick skin anyway. I think the problem is he's quite aloof and quite cold. And if you look at I think it was Jack Mate did a podcast with Johnson, and it's quite telling when he was talking about how Moyes is, and he makes the point of, basically Johnson is one of the outside players. There are a few players that he talks to a lot, and they're mainly the senior players, and mainly the ones that start almost every game. But other players he's a bit more aloof to and a bit more distant. So, arguably those players that are on the fringes are ones that you want to bring in a lot more to make him feel part of the team, but it doesn't appear to be his way. So I just think it's Moyes as it is. And when you look at some of his press conferences, it is arrogant. You also sit there, you look at what he's saying, and you just have the Albert Einstein thing flash up in your mind of doing the same thing again.
It's like, you remember that thing, Joe, I win. That's what I do. I mean, in his head, that's absolutely true. In his head, he's a great manager, I think. And it doesn't seem to matter what the results are, or, we're having a terrible season, and it doesn't seem to affect his opinion of himself in any way. I think self-reflection is probably not his strong point.
Yeah, I think what's weird and what gets me the most is every game we lose, or we've not, is always we're unlucky. We've only been unlucky against Chelsea. Let's be honest. Every other game we've lost because individual errors, or we've just not been good enough on the day. That's why we've lost. It hasn't been luck. We've been wasteful. Again, that's not luck. That's players not concentrating, not doing the things technically. They're making mistakes. That's not luck. That is to do with individuals not doing what they should be doing, or as a collective not doing what we should be doing. Chelsea is the only time we've had bad luck. And as the season's crept on, the players have talked about, we've been unlucky today. It was unlucky. Those kind of things weren't really said last year, but this year it's now creeping in with the players. And it's that thing of when we lose, there's not really accountability. It's bad luck. And it's not taking the accountability is, you know what, I probably should have made subs earlier. Probably should have changed how we approached that game. None of that. It's we're playing well. We're doing the right things. If we keep going, things will change. And it's not actually giving a level of accountability that may get the players to go, you know what, fair play, boss. You've taken that on the chin for us by saying that you didn't make it. Now we're going to give something back to you. Yeah. It just doesn't. It seems like a disconnect to what is actually happening on the pitch.
Yeah. And then you inevitably end up just flogging a dead horse. Keep doing the same things that aren't working in the belief that you just need a little bit more luck in games, and you start getting some wins. It's deluded, frankly, and I think it's why I do not believe he will turn the season around. I don't think he's capable of it. I really don't. I don't think that the self-reflection is there. There apparently is nobody on his staff who can pull him aside and actually speak to him, is in a position on a personal level with Moyes, who can actually speak to him man to man, as it were, and lay it down and say, look, this is the fucking reality here, mate. And
I think that's where
I think maybe Alan Irvine was a kind of someone who could have done that. Alan Irvine, I think, was someone who could have said, Moisey, look, you're wrong. It's not working, and here's why. And you've got to change things up a bit. I don't think there's anyone on the staff right now that can do any of that is in a position to get away with that kind of thing.
I think that's why we need Noble now to step up, because effectively being a sporting director, arguably he's Moyes' boss. He's the one that manages all the sporting side. So really, he probably has to be the one that says, "Listen, things are not going right here. We need to make some changes. You need to be more adaptive. We need to do something different because what we're doing isn't working."
I've got to look at this comment from Usual Suspect, and I do agree with a lot of what Usual Suspect says. Moyes doesn't send the team out to win, though. He sends it out not to lose. And that's the mentality that West Ham have got. Like, to sort of wrap up, basically talk about the end of with what's going on with Moyes, to wrap this show up. For me, I think West Ham are in a bit of a predicament now in regards of him, because the next 3 games, Newcastle, Chelsea, Spurs, 3 big games against 3 teams that are better than us at the minute. If he don't win any game out of them, and we come to the Forest game at the end of the month, end of February, then to me it's like it's a must-win game again, isn't it? It's a must-not. It's like you're putting all your eggs in one basket again and resetting again, basically. And I want to ask both of you.
And then what if he wins the Forest game? Does he get another 3 or 4 games?
And that is the problem, mate. Right, and that is the problem. This, I don't know about you lads, but this smells to me of Avram Grant all over again. Over again.
We spoke about Avram Grant.
And every time though, but Mike, every time I say it to the lads on this channel, because I've got a lot of younger lads who come on, a lot of 22-year-olds who was a lot younger back then, but then I've got a lot of older people who come on the channel who basically are like me, have seen the Avram Grant. I've seen people in the chat saying about Avram Grant, and they remember it clear as day. Now this feels like that again. It feels like the next 3 games feel like Newcastle game on Saturday night. Right, we're going to know if West Ham have turned a corner or not, in my opinion, because if West Ham go up there and they get blitzed, then for me, West Ham haven't turned no corner. They've just been getting away with it against lesser teams, in my opinion. I'd be interested to know what you lads think moving forward with regards to them next 3 games.
I think
Everton were the worst team we've played this season, in my opinion. I think before that game, it was Wolves at home. I remember their manager got sacked after that loss. Lampard gets sacked after we beat Everton. The 2 worst teams whose managers were on the brink, who were in terrible form. Those are the games we've won. So that's not evidence of turning any corners. I mean, and we're at a point now in the season where I don't think we can afford to be talking about you've got 3 games. But we're in such a predicament now, and particularly with the teams around us strengthening, that they could start to improve and start picking up more points. I think we're past the point now where you can give him any grace because of who we're playing. If we were further up the table, you could forgive losing at Newcastle because they're flying it and they're one of the best teams in the league this season. But I think we're past the point where you can give him any mercy for who we're playing. We have to win games now. We've got to start picking up wins, regardless of who we're playing against, because our predicament is that bad. I think we can't afford to allow it was Newcastle away, we'll kind of give him that one. We're past that point, in my opinion.
I agree.
Under different circumstances, you can give a manager that kind of grace, but not in this predicament that we're in, because we have to start winning games now. We have to start showing some form now. We need 3 points against Newcastle desperately to keep ourselves out of that relegation zone. And so, to me, if we go up there and we get well beaten, I think he should be sacked. I wouldn't give him any grace because it was Newcastle away. We're past that point now, in my opinion.
I totally agree. What do you reckon, Mike?
Yeah, I've said it quite clearly that I thought he should be sacked before the World Cup. I also said
Great.
during this period as well that if within the next 3 games, if he loses one of those games, he's going to get sacked, then sack him now. Because you've set him up to foul. I think basically it's like the Bilic cycle again. He's going to get a set of games. If you hit a minimum or just under, that will get you to the next ones. I think ultimately what we're looking at is a board that do not want to pay the money it's going to take to compensate him, and then do not see within the market themselves someone that they think is guaranteeing going to keep us up, which is why they haven't done it. So essentially they have just sat there and gone, well, we'll roll the dice and see what happens. And with Moyes, I think they'll just go, well, if we don't get a win in those 3 games, as long as we get a draw in the next 3, he then has not a Forest where we have to win. If he wins that, then he gets the next month. That's also then 475 grand taken off the compensation fee. If he can then do the same again in the next month, that's another 400 grand. Now, if we look like we're getting relegated, we can then get rid of him, but then we saved ourselves £1 million. So, that, in a really cynical way, that's also how I'm looking at how they're looking at it. It's if you can just get this minimum set of points, then we'll keep going, because then we can just, we can do it. And I think there's a slight fear from them in
Kick
that.
the can down the road, I think they call it, Mike.
Yeah, I think there's also a slight fear from them in that, well, if we get rid of Moyes, we no longer have the full guy. We don't now have the guy that the fans are going to concentrate on. It's going to be us.
Right.
And then the pressure is really going to be on them to sell once it hits April, because if in April we're still in a relegation fight, it's not just going to be Moyes out. It's going to be back to Hammer United, fans all getting saying, right, we need to protest. We need to get them out, because 2 years of success has quelled some of that as well as hope. And if we're back in that state, it's going to be people going, well, where's what you promised us? We had some promise and you blew it. So we were willing to give you some time. We were willing to give you a little bit of credit, but you've now completely ruined it by 2 Januaries and not doing anything.
Yeah.
If it was to get relegated or be in a relegation fight, come that point when they can start selling, you can guarantee there's going to be a groundswell of people, again, going back to the GSP out kind of movement and process, or being loud about it again, because you're now about to probably take us down. That's going to be your legacy, to take us all the way here and then to blow it because you didn't invest in it, and then you've taken us down.
See, what you just said there, absolutely spot on. Brilliant, Mike. Really, really good. Well, from what you were coming out with there. One thing I did pick up with what you said is about the hierarchy. And if it ain't so much Kadinsky. I see people digging at Kadinsky, and it ain't on Kadinsky, because from people that I know, and I do speak to quite a few people around West Ham, being sort of in Dagenham, basically, that Kadinsky wanted Moyes out. He wanted Moyes out after the Palace game. He said, get him out, get someone in for the Leicester game, and then let them build from there. Right, and this is on Sullivan, really. Right, it always has been.
So got Sullivan and Gold. Gold wouldn't have let him go, and probably now out of loyalty to his mate and his family, probably also out of loyalty to their dad. We need to back the man that dad wants at the club, and would have fought tooth and nail to keep. And I think that will be part of that conversation, and also the sentimentality of what happened last year. A lot of people say he's got credit in the bank and he was successful. If you really break it down, well, success means winning trophies. So he wasn't actually successful. We had a good season, but in terms of actual success, Tottenham have said they've been successful for years, but they haven't got anything to show for it other than a new stadium and a better economical state. Arsenal in that period, who were apparently unsuccessful, were successful in the sense they won trophies. So it's, again, I guess it comes down to how do you quantify success? But the truth of the matter is, people going, well, we were here when Moyes started. That's an irrelevance. Moyes got us to this point. That's now our benchmark. You can't constantly go back to, well, we were almost relegated. We're almost relegated now. So our benchmark has gone from we're almost relegated to Moyes. He's taken us to this point, but he's also taken us back to the point that he came in. So what we've done a massive, arch.
360,
How you can't the conversation as to, well, look where he's taken us to. He's taken us from relegation battle to relegation battle. If you want to put your benchmark there, That's what he's done. So
I agree. I agree.
You can't shift the model. Your house has to be where you were last year as your benchmark, and then you go on from there, and then you try to improve.
Especially with the amount of money that West Ham have spent. Also, I just want to get to this comment quickly. Any signings today, lads? No, the bee's knees. There is no signings, mate. This is West Ham United. We don't do nothing in January in the last hours of the window. So sadly, it ain't looking like anything's happening. I do agree with what you're saying, though, right, with him. Yeah. But the only thing I look at, when I do look on social media, and you do a lot of stuff on Twitter and everything, and Tommy's on Twitter quite a lot, and you see people going at Moyes. I understand that. I really do. Yeah, I understand people going for Moyes because his stubbornness and his arrogancy is a reason why West Ham do lose games sometimes and do drop points. But then no one goes at Sullivan. No one really says, right, it's him at the top who's the dictator. Like, you've got to take the man out of the top of the tree so it filters down to the man who's running the team, in my opinion. And
again, the problem, isn't it? We're doing well. We did well under the manager. The manager is now fallen down and fallen off cliffs. So he is now, you are, at this point in time, you are the biggest, I guess, cause of friction.
Yeah.
People are starting to now question a lot more, again, about Sullivan and what he's doing. But the problem is, because we had such a good period and we spent money, a lot of the conversations put forward against them can be batted away, because a lot of the time it is they don't spend money. That's been wrong for a number of years, that they don't spend money. So the problem is they've kind of been able to shift the dialogue, and the manager is front and center of all of our problems at the mix. They made it front and center of all of our success. It didn't push themselves in there. So again, they kept themselves away and out of the limelight. So people didn't really focus on them. It's all on Moyes. Now we're doing badly again. It's all on Moyes because the ball back to him. And he's now not played some of those players, and he's not utilising his whole squad. So that's now on Moyes, not the board. But if we get relegated because we keep Moyes, the conversation will change, and it'll be, who cares about the manager right now? It's all about you lot, because you didn't sort us out. And now we're not spending in January. Again, it's starting to turn towards both because of the Diver and Dave piece, front and centre of everything you see. So who are you going to talk about first? Diver and Dave. Dave hasn't made a decision. Dave has delayed it. Dave is still trying to get his target list. He's front and centre of every conversation. We know the board are behind the process of bringing in. But again, they can go, well, we tried, but he said no.
Yeah. But and just to expand on that, I mean, what I've been saying the last few weeks, Mike, and I've said it on this show with you, James, more than once, I think, is that the right thing to do would have been to sack Moyes once we broke up for the World Cup, get a new manager in, essentially give him a pre-season plus the January transfer window and try and get this season turned around. As soon as the board made the decision to not do that and to put their weight and their confidence behind David Moyes and back him, from that moment on, as far as I'm concerned, the board are now carrying the can. They're carrying the can for the results and whatever happens on the pitch. David Moyes is going to be David Moyes. All we're ever going to get from Moyes is Moyes. He's just being himself. This is who he is as a manager. As far as I'm concerned, from that moment on, this has been on the board. You decided to back him. Okay, fine. You can do that. You have the power to do that and the right to do that. He's your employee. But if you want to back him, then it's on you from here on in. It's as simple as that. And so like, I don't even blame David Moyes anymore. It's pointless. He's just being himself. This is exactly what I expected to happen. For me now, it's all upstairs. They made a poor decision. And now they're the ones who should carry the can for it. I
agree. I really do. I can't not stress enough. I am nervous. I've said it to you. I said it to Mike on his channel. I'm nervous, mate. Like the next 3 games for me, right? We have got teams where Chelsea have got Chelsea 2 weeks ago to Chelsea in 2 weeks' time are going to be a different animal, I think, with the amount of talent that they've just brought in. Whether or not they're all going to click, that's a different story. But I am worried now because I've got no faith in Moyes whatsoever. to sort of get us out of this mess. But the question I'm going to leave it is, to round this up, is this. How many points are we getting for the next 3? Mike? I know it's a tough one, but I'll let you have it first. Give me a number.
It wouldn't surprise me if we managed to nick a win. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if one of those games somehow we'd get a win. But I think more than likely we're looking at maybe 2 points at the most in that set of games, and that is probably enough to get him through to Nottingham Forest.
Yeah. I actually agree. I actually think we can get something at Newcastle. I don't think we can win there, but I think we can draw there. They are known to be draw specialists, especially at home, Newcastle. So I will say that. I think the Chelsea game for me is a toss of a coin. If West Ham turn up at the LS and they're on it, it's a lunchtime kickoff on a Saturday. We could get something there. Like, we could get something against them, right? So that's a toss of a coin. And the Spurs game for me is another one. They're all sort of 50-50 games for me. Like, they really are. Like, I don't really see Spurs as the team they once were, but it's yet again a London derby, White Hart Lane. It's going to be hard to get anything there. But if we can get 2 points, or if we can get 3 draws, right, I'll be happy. Like, just don't lose. That's what I'm saying. Like, because I think if we lose these games and we get hammered in these games, I think the confidence just goes. Tommy, what are you saying for points wise?
Yeah, I think we're beyond the point of being happy with 3 points from the next 9. We were just in too much of a pickle. Like I said, we've got to start winning games. You know, on your average season, if you could get 3 draws in the next 3 games, you'd consider those all good points. But like I say, we're just past that point now. I mean, if we come out with 3 points from 9 from those 3 games, we're in the relegation zone. You know, we're back in the relegation zone, and it's not good enough. I'm sorry. Like we have to demand wins at this point. We've got to pick up in those 3 games. I think we've got to win one of them at least, and I think we've got to pick up at least a point from the other 2. So whichever way they come, I don't see us getting anything at Newcastle. I think they're just too good for us right now. They're at home. I know what you're saying. They have had a little bit of a fall off. They've been drawing more than they've been winning recently, but I think we're exactly the game they need at home right now to get back to winning ways, and I think they will. I just don't see us getting anything up at St James's. Home to Chelsea, we could. If their form doesn't pick up, you know, they've been struggling, really, Chelsea. At home to Chelsea, that's a game, if they don't improve. I know they've got a couple of new players in now as well, so we'll see what that does for them. But if they don't improve, that's the kind of game we could nick 1-0. You know, it really is like that's a potential for a win if they don't improve. We'll see how they're looking by the time that game comes around. But equally, you know, if we don't improve our form, it's a game we could lose too. Away to Tottenham, obviously, it's a tough game as well. But Tottenham they're Tottenham, you know. There's all
they brought their bottles with them.
Whenever you play Tottenham, there's always a possibility you can turn them over. So there's potential there for us to get some points. It's just hard at the moment to feel confident that we'll get them. We probably won't lose all 3. I want to be optimistic because I think the points are potentially there. You know, maybe 4 points. I think maybe we could get 4. Suspicion if Chelsea don't improve that it's a game we could just nick. You know, and we tend to do okay against Tottenham. You know, and we could maybe go up there and get a point. You know, they're not pulling up any trees at the moment, Tottenham. So, you know, just to be optimistic, because I want to be, and we're in desperate need. I'll say 4 points, but look, it could be fucking 0. You know, we just don't know.
Joe, what? I was listening to what you were saying, and I was thinking, that in our luck, we'll probably get 5 points, be unbeaten in 3, and then we're going to lose against Forest. It's just on the cards, isn't it?
Let's face it, how West Ham would that be?
That is, man.
Go into this sequence, come out of it really well. Everyone's like, oh my God, we're turning the corner. Moyes has got it. And then we go to Forest, and then we are absolutely awful.
Yeah.
It's just that is the epitome of West Ham, quite frankly.
Totally agree, lads. Totally agree. Right, I'm going to wrap this up there. Lads, I really do appreciate both of you coming on tonight for this sort of transfer window sort of discussion about West Ham United. So I really do appreciate it. Please do smash a like on the video. It goes a long way. Please do subscribe to the channel. Before I go from here tonight, Mike's going to shout out his channel. Go over, subscribe to the man's channel. I want to get him to try and get him up to 500 by the end of like February. So I will get him on again, and I will put the link in the description tonight to go over there and subscribe to his channel. So Mike, shout your channel out before we go.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Cheers, mate. So Babbling Irons. So it's myself, two other guys, chatting all West Ham. Hopefully, some balanced views on West Ham. But yeah, we're on YouTube. We're on obviously Twitter as well. Both the same, Babbling Irons. Please do check us out if you like our stuff. Obviously, like it. Please do subscribe as well. And yeah, cheers guys for listening. And all the comments as well have been awesome as well in this show. So cheers, man.
No worries, Mike. No worries at all. Tommy, always a pleasure as always. I'm going to wrap it up there. I will be back Thursday to do a preview, probably with Tommy if Tommy's about on Thursday, to look towards the Newcastle game. Right? Are we going to get anything at Newcastle? I don't know. Right? I hope so.
Just make sure. Just don't forget everyone in the live chat just to take all your antidepressants before that one.
Yeah, just make sure that you're ready for what's coming on Saturday evening. We will see what happens with West Ham over the next sort of few hours, but obviously it's highly unlikely that West Ham are going to sign anyone in the next sort of hour and 33 minutes and 42 seconds. So yeah, listen. It's been a pleasure. You take care of yourself. And before I go, I just want to say this. I haven't mentioned it, but I put something out on Twitter early on today about saying in regards to my girlfriend, the amount of support that I got from the people saying to me, like, I'm glad she's okay, because she had a bit of a cancer scare. And I've been holding it together. And the close lads on this channel all knew what was going on. And they've been solid as a rock. Like, I can't stress enough how much they've been good. So I really appreciate the comments on Twitter today. Things are looking up rather than down. And I can't thank you enough. So on that note, I'm going to let you all have a good Tuesday evening, and I'll be back again soon. West Ham never fails to surprise us. Take care, man.
Go feed your greyhound, James.
There it is. I've never found a love like this.